Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to my Basics in Chess series. So in this series we'll see opening principles, middle game strategies and middle game plannings and the endgame strategy. So today after a long time we'll do again an endgame lesson. Today we talk about this two connected pass pawn situation. I've talked about this two connected pass pawn situation in one of my endgame videos so far, but today we'll do this two connected pass pawns combined with some rooks on the board. And when you playing this endgame, you want to create this endgame situation in which you have two connected pass pawns because they're stronger than these two separated pass pawns like black has here, because the two connected pass pawns have their own strength. And you see, when we're playing with this two connected pass pawn situation, when wherever we put the rook, it's white's move. Black's rook will never be able to catch this two connected pass pawns, so white will promote to queen for sure here. So let's see this rook on d4. If we try, if white now moves simply d7, then maybe black can play rook on d6, but then again we can play c7. Black will capture the pawn on d7 and we can promote, of course, to c8. The same thing is also with this rook. We can play simply forward, then black has to take the c6, then again we can promote. The same thing with this rook here. We can simply push forward. If the rook comes here on d8, we can play again c7 and then after that c8. So here is the problem when you have this not connected pass pawn. So you see this rook can always catch these two pawns. Now if you move the pawn, of course you will lose the pawn on c1. The same thing with the pawn on a1. So it means that in order to get this pawns promoted, you need the help of your king. But when we have these two connected pass pawns on the 6th rank, at least, you don't need anymore the king in order to promote here. You have this power of the two connected pass pawns, and you should simply play on to that. So let's see now these examples. Here we have this situation. White has the two connected pass pawn situation and black doesn't have. So of course this should be a completely winning endgame here, which it is. Here white can try h5. Here c4 can be played. Now we start to push another pawn because we want to create these two connected pass pawns on the 6th rank, which is deadly then for black. Then it's game over. So here rook on d4. Here we have king on e5, rook on d3. Now the rook can always create this annoying checks. King on c6. Now we have rook on b1, and now we have the situation in which white will simply wait and try to catch both of these pawns on the c and a file. So here rook on h3. Now h6 can be played. Now c3. Now the king can also go here on f6. Here we have a4, rook on c1. Now king on d5. We have king on g7, king on e6. But now we can simply push forward, you see, and this is of course a completely winning endgame here for white. In the next move we can also grab this pawn. So see, black was really occupied with these two pawns because there is this rule in chess while playing an endgame. You should always go behind this pawns with your rook. So that's the main idea. You want to go behind, but you see, because black didn't have this two connected pass pawn situation, white could have gone in front of them and really dominate on the 1st rank here and create some checks. Here of course black cannot create these checks because we have the two connected pass pawn situation, and after rook on g3 we would simply push the pawn forward on g6. So as said, it's really a huge advantage to have these types of positions. So let's see now these top grandmasters how they transposed from a middle game into an end game just in order to create this two connected pass pawn situation. So here is a game. We have a game by Akiba Rubinstein against Oscar Hayes, and here black took the pawn on g2. So now we're watching the pawn structure here. We want to create the two pass pawn connected pass pawn situation in an endgame. So that's why here first h4. We don't want to lose pawns immediately, because we want to force our opponent to do something. We want to force him to create at least 2 or 3 more tempos just in order to grab a pawn. So here rook on f2 was played, and now rook on f4. Now in the next move we will take the pawn on a4 and create this 2 connected pass pawn situation. So here we have g5, h takes g5, h takes g5. Now rook takes on a4. And now, of course, rook takes on f3, but now we have these 2 connected pass pawns which cannot be stopped by the rook. So here, rook on g4, we have king on g6. Now, of course, b4, pushing forward immediately. We don't have time to waste here. So here, rook on g1, now g4. Now we can play b5. We have g6, g3, pardon me, a4. We have king on h4. Now simply push forward here. King on h3 was played, but now again very strong move. You see now the rook cannot go behind, so the rook has to go here. But now after a5, here we have king on h2. Now rook takes on g3, king takes on g3, and now we have this 2 connected pass pawns. At least one of them is on 6th rank, so of course the rook cannot stop both of them. So here rook on b8 can be played, but now king on b3, we have king on f4. You see white goes also into this opposition, which is very important. King on e5, we have king on c5, and in this position black resigned, because in the next move we'll simply play here a7 on a8, or we can also play c6, then c7, which is even stronger, because the king cannot go and help this rook in order to prevent these pawns from promotion. So you see this power of the 2 connected pass pawns. It's really important to realize in your own games, because there are these common positions in which we have equal material, equal pawns, equal number of pawns, you see, and we want to create always an advantage on that side, in which we can create this 2 connected pass pawn situation, like Akiba Rubinstein here did, and he played this very nice endgame, and of course won the game. So here's another game. It's a game by Zikbert Tarash against David Janovsky. Both of the players very good theoreticians in chess, known for their very good opening lines. So here white plays rook on d6, and here rook on c3 can be played. Rook takes on d5, rook takes on b3, now rook takes on a5, and now king on e6. Okay, white is up a pawn, but it's really hard to battle here, because we haven't created sort of an immediate pawn breakthrough. If we try to go after this beef pawn, then we start to push our own pawn. Black will do the same. After the trades of pawns, the position could get simplified, and while playing this endgames, you don't want to get you don't want to get too many pawns exchanged. You don't want to exchange pawns, because if the position changes, if we have maybe 1 pawn and a rook, and your opponent has only 1 rook without a pawn, it's basically a draw. It's a thematic draw, and you shouldn't trade off, as I said, too many pawns. We want to have as many pawns as possible on the board. So here that's why rook on f5 was played by white. We have rook on a3, now rook on a5. So we are not allowing here black to trade off some pawns. We want to keep the pawns on the board. Our main goal is here to create maybe this two connected pass pawn situation. But in order to do that, we have to deflect the king from the defense of this pawn. So here king on e7 was played, king on c2. We have king on e6. Now rook on b5. We have king on d6, king on b2, now again king on e6, and now rook on b6. Now we have a king on d5, and now finally rook on f6. Now we have the situation in which we can grab a pawn. So here king on c4 was played. Now king on rook on f5. We have rook on b3. Now rook on c2, rook on c3, king on d2, again a check on d3, the king escapes here on e2, and now we have rook takes on d4. So now we here Zigbet Tarash pushed the pawn immediately on a6, just in order to deflect the rook here from the defense of these two pawns. Here rook takes on g5, and again we have the situation in which white created the two pass pawn situation. So here b3, now rook on g7, we have rook on b2, of course rook on b7, getting behind this pawn. We have rook king on c3, now f4, rook on a8, now f5, rook takes on a6, and now king on e3, and now rook on a4. Now black's threat is of course to go rook on b4, which could cut off really this very important line of the rook. So black really threatens here to promote. So that's why Zigbet Tarash immediately took off this pawn on b2. After king takes on b2, now we have this two connected pass pawn situation, and now very strong move f6. So if black takes, of course, then we simply push forward, and there black cannot go here on f4, and black cannot go here on g8 in order to prevent white from promotion. So here that's why after f6 we have rook on a1, but now g5 again. Here we have rook on f1, now king on d4. Very strong move, because we're cutting off the king. We are not allowing the king to go into the game and help somehow the rook here to prevent really white to push these pawns. Here b3, now king on e5, we have king on c4, now g6, king on rook on e1, now king on d6, and now we have this two connected pass pawn situation on the 6th rank. So here basically it's game over for black. But let's see the continuation. Rook on d1, here we have king on e6, rook on e1, now of course king on f7, and you see black cannot check anymore the white's king. So here the threat is of course g7, g8, and black is forced to give up the rook, and of course we will have this very strong pawn then in the continuation, and white has of course a completely winning endgame here. So, and as I always love to say, well, the endgame has basically its own rule. Here is a really nice chess puzzle, and here is the problem. In the next move, white has to decide which pawn to take. And you see, if you have watched this video, of course, the first idea is to take the pawn on e5. But this is now a problem. We have created this two connected pass pawn situation, but when we play an endgame, we always want to ask ourselves which pawn can we take after that, and which pawn can we take. We cannot take after a couple of trades. So see, after rook takes on a5, this pawn is always an object of our attack, and the most important thing is that we can cut off the king here with this move rook on d5, and we will protect our own pawn on d3. So if you play here rook on e5, it's a forced draw, and this is the problem. This is the paradox always in an endgame, because as I said, the endgame has its own rules. We have to be really careful while playing an endgame. Here most of us would probably take here this pawn on e5, creating this two connected pass pawn situation, but now it's a draw because black can simply push forward a4, rook on a5 can be played, now rook on a1. If white takes now the pawn on g5, we can play rook on d2, and now if white is trying to protect, we can simply go forward. Maybe white can do e5, but now a2, white is forced to do something, and now we can take this pawn, and you see white lost his advantage of these two connected pass pawns, and it's really now forced draw. So that's why you have to be really careful here. Rook on a5 is the best move. Now if rook on d2 is played, now we have of course rook on d5, and now we have protected this very important d3. Now we can go with our king and take this e5 pawn, and we will have then this very important two connected pass pawn situation. So you have to be careful. You have to be also aware of your opponent's threats, what what he can do, which pawns he can push. You see, this g5 is a weak pawn anyway, and now the e5 is a weak pawn anyway. So you see, if we would have gone here for this e5, black would continue here with this very mobile a4 pawn, which could cause some damage. So here, let's see now the continuation. Here king on c7 can be played. Now of course king on g4. Black can try maybe a check, but now of course king on f5, and here we can take another pawn. Here rook on f2. Now king on d4. Here rook on f3 can be played, but now we simply go behind, and now we start to push on two connected pass pawns. So you see, if black always tries this check, we can always hide behind these two pawns. It's very important motif while playing with these two connected pass pawns. Here g3, now a check. Now we simply can go here, and we can take another pawn. Here check, and now again creating these two connected pass pawns, which is of course a completely winning endgame here. So I hope you realize these ideas. As said, when you have maybe 3-on-3, 4-4 situations, try to find your connected pass pawns where you can really have them connected. As said, when your pawns are on the 6th rank and connected, this rook cannot grab them. You probably promote the queen, and always you have to be careful. You have to see what are your opponent's threats, which pawns are mobile, which pawns are not mobile. By your opponent, you should take, of course, first the mobile pawns if it's possible. If it's not, go behind them. You see, the main ideas are here really in this complex middle games, which can transpose into an endgame, and you should be really familiar with this common position, because then sometimes you can transpose from a middle game into an endgame without chance to lose this game, because you saw here Zigbert Tarash and Akiba Rubinstein that transposed sort of from their own middle games into an endgame because they knew they can create these two connected pass pawn situations. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other basics in chess videos from the series with some opening principles, middle game strategies, and end game strategies. And you can also watch my chess tactics and chess puzzles series, in which I show you all of the possible tactical motifs in a chess game. And you can also watch my series How to Spot Tactics in Chess, in which I show you positions that are common for some tactical motifs. And you can also subscribe to my channel. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.